In the vast expanse of the cosmos, the Galactic Assembly stood as the pinnacle of interstellar diplomacy. A sprawling station of glittering spires and luminescent corridors, it brought together representatives from countless species, each boasting advanced technologies and millennia of history. Among these civilizations, humanity was a fledgling participant, perceived as barely worthy of inclusion. The alien delegates often saw humans as quaint, fragile beings from an unremarkable corner of the galaxy. Whispers of amusement and disdain echoed in private conversations, dismissing Earth's representatives as naive and lacking the sophistication needed to navigate galactic politics. But the galaxy was far from peaceful. A shadow loomed in the form of the Zalvar, a ruthless, militaristic species feared across the stars. Their fleets moved like predators, consuming worlds and leaving nothing but silence in their wake. The coalition of advanced species, despite their combined might, found themselves at a standstill, unable to reach any accord with the Zalvar. In desperation, the Galactic Assembly convened an emergency summit, a last-ditch attempt to negotiate before plunging into an all-out war. Amidst the grandeur of alien delegates with ornate garments and glowing insignias sat Ambassador Alexander Drake. Humanity's representative was unassuming, clad in the simple attire of Earth's diplomatic corps. His presence drew little more than a glance, often accompanied by a smirk or a dismissive chuckle. Drake had become the subject of jokes, his quiet demeanor mistaken for weakness. The towering Drell envoy muttered that humans must send philosophers to fight wars, while the insected Vel delegate chittered in amusement at his silence during debates. Yet Drake was unbothered. He moved with an unhurried grace, a quiet confidence that belied the ridicule. His sharp green eyes seemed to take in everything, and though his words were few, they carried weight when spoken. To many, his restraint was seen as timidity. To those who observed more closely, it felt like something else entirely, a man who measured every word with precision. The Assembly's chamber buzzed with frustration as the delegates debated strategies. The Zalvar had rebuffed every diplomatic overture, their emissaries dismissing negotiations as a sign of weakness. Panic was setting in. War seemed inevitable, and the Assembly was ill-prepared for a direct confrontation. Voices rose in disagreement, some advocating for a preemptive strike while others urged further attempts at diplomacy. It was then that Drake stood, his calm voice cutting through the clamor. "I will go." The room fell silent for a moment before erupting in laughter. The idea of a human mediating with the Zalvar was absurd to them. An envoy from the Kreldar, a species known for their telepathic prowess, sneered. "Your kind has barely mastered interstellar travel, and you think you can reason with warlords?" Drake's expression remained impassive. "I understand the stakes. If we fail, there is no second chance. Let me speak to them." Despite their mockery, no one else volunteered. The risk was too great, and Drake's offer was accepted, if only to humor him. As he left the chamber, whispers followed him, dismissing the human's gesture as nothing more than bravado. As Drake prepared for the mission, subtle details began to emerge. His stride was deliberate, confident in a way that seemed out of place for someone deemed inexperienced. His hands bore faint scars, visible only to those who looked closely, and his assistant, a young human aide, addressed him with a respect that bordered on reverence. "Are you sure about this, sir?" the aide asked hesitantly. Drake's lips curved into a faint smile. "Diplomacy isn't just words. Sometimes it's about understanding your opponent better than they understand themselves." The alien delegates, watching from afar, dismissed these signs. To them, humans were masters of bluffing, and Drake's calm was merely a facade. What they couldn't see was the depth behind his measured demeanor, the shadows of battles fought long before humanity had earned its place among the stars. As Drake stepped aboard the ship that would take him into Zalvar territory, the Assembly turned their attention back to their debates, certain that this gamble would lead to nothing. Little did they know, their perception of humanity, and of Alexander Drake, was about to be irrevocably altered. The small Earth diplomatic vessel cruised through the void, dwarfed by the imposing blackness of space. The ship, while modest by galactic standards, moved with a quiet confidence, its unassuming design masking its advanced systems. Inside, Alexander Drake sat in the observation chamber, gazing out at the star-strewn abyss. His calm demeanor was unshaken, even as his aide voiced the unspoken fears shared by many. "The Zalvar aren't like the others, sir. They don't negotiate, they conquer." Drake's eyes never left the stars as he responded, his tone measured. "Every species has a language they understand. Ours is diplomacy. Theirs is dominance. It's just a matter of finding common ground." In the solitude of the journey, Drake immersed himself in the intricacies of the Zalvar. His quarters were scattered with data tablets displaying their history, tactics, and cultural nuances. He studied their myths, their wars, their rise to power. Patterns emerged, an obsession with strength, but also a deeply embedded sense of honor, rooted in their earliest tribal traditions. He took careful notes, piecing together insights that others had overlooked. By the time the ship approached the Zalvar stronghold, a fortress-like station bristling with weaponry, Drake was prepared. The stark contrast between the Earth vessel and the Zalvar warships surrounding it was striking. Yet, as Drake disembarked, there was no hesitation in his step. He carried himself with the quiet confidence of a man who knew the battlefield, even if this one happened to be words. General Crothval towered over him, an embodiment of raw power and menace. The Zalvar leader's crimson armor was etched with scars, his reptilian features twisted in a permanent sneer. His voice rumbled like thunder as he addressed Drake. "A human? They send prey to bargain with predators?" The gathered Zalvar warriors growled in laughter, their amusement echoing through the chamber. Drake stepped forward undeterred. His voice was steady, his words chosen with precision. "They send the one who understands you better than you understand yourselves." His gaze locked with Crothval's, unflinching in the face of the general's towering presence. The room fell silent for a moment, the Zalvar warriors watching intently. Crothval's eyes narrowed, his tone dripping with disdain. "Bold words for a weak species. Speak quickly before I grow bored." Drake began not with demands, but with a story. He recounted a tale from Zalvar history, one of a great warlord who united their clans through strategy, not brute strength. He spoke of battles won through cunning, of victories achieved without a single blow struck. As he spoke, the room shifted. Crothval's amusement gave way to curiosity, his warriors exchanging glances. "You think you impress me by knowing our history?" Crothval growled, though his tone carried a hint of unease. "It's not about impressing you," Drake replied. "It's about showing you that I understand the Zalvar way. I see the strength in your people, but I also see the cracks. You've built an empire on fear, but fear is a poor foundation. It crumbles when met with something stronger." Crothval stepped closer, his voice a dangerous whisper. "And what would a human know of strength?" Drake met his gaze evenly, his tone unwavering. "Enough to know that strength isn't just in muscle or fleets. It's in knowing when to fight and when not to. Your people once knew that. Somewhere along the way you forgot." The tension in the room was palpable. Crothval's claws flexed, but he did not strike. Instead, he gestured to a seat, a grudging respect flickering in his expression. "Speak, then. Prove your words have worth." As the negotiations unfolded, Drake's true brilliance came to light. He spoke not in ultimatums but in challenges, framing his proposals in a way that appealed to the Zalvar's sense of pride. He referenced an ancient honor code long thought forgotten, weaving it into his arguments. "Your ancestors believed in strength through unity, not destruction," he stated. "This is your chance to reclaim that legacy." Crothval's scowl deepened, yet he did not interrupt. The general's warriors, who had mocked Drake upon his arrival, now watched him with a mix of curiosity and respect. It was clear that the human had done his homework, his words striking chords they hadn't expected. But Crothval was not so easily swayed. "Words mean nothing without proof," he declared. Drake's response was swift and calculated. "Then let us duel, not with weapons but with wit. A battle of minds as your ancestors once settled disputes. If I win, you listen. If I lose, I leave." The proposal was bold, audacious even. Yet, it played perfectly into the Zalvar psyche. Hrothgar could not refuse without appearing weak before his warriors. The duel began, a verbal sparring match that tested not just intelligence but also resolve. Drake's words were razor-sharp, each argument meticulously crafted to dismantle Hrothgar's defenses. He drew on the general's own history, exposing contradictions in his stance. Subtle hints of Drake's military past emerged in his strategic maneuvering, the way he anticipated Hrothgar's responses and countered them effortlessly. By the end of the duel, the room was silent. Hrothgar's expression was unreadable, his pride wounded yet unable to deny the human's victory. With a begrudging nod, he conceded. "You have earned my ear, human. Speak your terms." Drake did not gloat, nor did he falter. His mission was far from over, but the tides had turned. The Zalvar, once impervious to negotiation, were now listening. It was a victory born not of power, but of understanding, a testament to the quiet strength that had always been Alexander Drake's greatest weapon. Hrothgar sat back in his imposing throne, his crimson eyes narrowing as he regarded Alexander Drake. "You've won your words, human," the general growled, his tone carrying grudging respect. "I will honor the terms for now. But don't mistake this for submission. You remain nothing more than a frail diplomat, hiding behind clever talk because you lack the spine to fight." Drake's expression remained calm, his gaze steady. For a moment, the chamber seemed to hold its breath. Then he spoke, his voice low but razor-sharp. "You think I've never fought?" His words carried an edge that cut through the air like a blade. "General, I've fought wars your kind cannot fathom. I've stood where others fled, turned the tides where all seemed lost. Your weapons and fleets do not impress me, they remind me of the battles I've already won." The silence in the room was deafening. Hrothgar leaned forward, his sneer faltering. "What are you saying?" Drake's reply came without hesitation. "You see a diplomat because that's what I choose to be now. But long before this, I was something else." Images of Drake's past flashed in stark detail, fragments of battles fought in shadow. A younger Drake, clad in combat gear, orchestrating precision strikes on enemy strongholds. Covert operations in hostile territory, where one misstep meant death. Leading desperate defenses, outgunned and outnumbered, yet emerging victorious through cunning and resolve. His voice, a steady presence over calm channels, rallying troops on the brink of despair. Drake had been a strategist, a tactician who turned the impossible into the inevitable. His victories were never loud or celebrated. They were decisive and devastating, leaving his enemies broken before they even understood the game he was playing. His reputation had been forged in the crucible of war, but it was a burden he had carried alone, his accomplishments shrouded in secrecy. "I was a soldier," he said finally, his voice tinged with a quiet gravity. "But I learned that the true art of war isn't in the fighting, it's in ensuring the fight never happens in the first place. That's why I'm here. That's why I stood before you today." Hrothgar's claws tightened against the armrests of his throne, his arrogance tempered by something unspoken. Respect. Fear. Understanding. "Then you are not the weakling I took you for," the general admitted, his voice quieter now. "You are a warrior who wears no armor." Drake gave a small nod. "I am what I need to be." The treaty was finalized shortly after, the ink drying on a peace agreement that no one had believed possible. Hrothgar's signature loomed at the bottom of the document, a symbol of reluctant cooperation. As the Zalvar leader handed the treaty back to Drake, his gaze lingered, the weight of the moment settling over him. "You have my word," Hrothgar said, his tone solemn. "But know this, human, your kind has gained my respect today. Lose it, and there will be no treaties next time." Drake offered a faint smile, one that seemed more knowing than relieved. "Respect is earned, General. I'll make sure humanity keeps it." News of the treaty spread quickly. Delegates across the Galactic Assembly reacted with a mix of disbelief and awe. The once dismissive murmurs about humanity now turned into hushed reverence. Alien ambassadors struggled to reconcile the image of the meek Earth diplomat with the man who had not only tamed the Zalvar but also stood unfazed in the face of their greatest warrior. Back at the Assembly, Drake walked into the chamber where his peers had once mocked him. This time, no one spoke. Heads turned, some in deference, others in quiet contemplation. Even the most arrogant voices among the coalition seemed subdued, as if they now saw something in him they hadn't noticed before. The Drell envoy, who had once ridiculed Drake for his perceived weakness, approached cautiously. "We misjudged you, Ambassador," he admitted. "It seems there's more to humanity than we understood." Drake's response was simple, his tone carrying no malice. "There always has been. You just weren't looking." As the session concluded, Drake stepped out into the quiet corridors of the assembly, leaving behind a room still grappling with the implications of what had transpired. His aide, waiting for him outside, hesitated before speaking. "Sir, how do you think history will remember this day?" Drake paused for a moment, his expression thoughtful. "History remembers actions, not words. What matters isn't that they remember me, it's that they remember what humanity is capable of." With that, he walked on, his steps purposeful, his presence leaving an indelible mark on the galaxy. Behind him, whispers grew, not of derision but of curiosity, of awe. The warrior diplomat had changed the course of history, and in doing so, had shown the universe a glimpse of humanity's true potential.